What's up guys, Brute Force Brigade here with another Idle Heroes tips and tricks. This is my part 2 to the Shadow Heroes. Shadow Heroes that you absolutely want to avoid if you possibly can. So let's go ahead and kick things off. I would say, hands down, without a doubt, the worst Shadow Hero, the one you absolutely want to avoid, is Bade. Which I had really high hopes for this character. I think he's one of the cooler looking characters in the entire game, to be honest, and they buffed him and they also made him quite better with his 10-star edition. Unfortunately, he's still not up to par. So let's go ahead and dive right into him. Bade has a pretty decent amount of HP, not too bad at all. You can compare him to other heroes. Let's see who's better. Let's go with one of these new heroes here. I think this guy's a warrior. So he's pretty on par. He's about 50,000, looks like, below. So not too bad. But I think that's about all that you could say that's good about this hero. His attack's not too much lower, but his abilities just aren't on par. He has a decent amount of armor, much higher than the assassins we were looking at in the previous video, and he is pretty damn slow. So let's go ahead and take a look at his actual abilities. Active skill, deal 260% of attack damage against the enemy with the lowest HP. A lot of heroes used to have this. Mirage is one where he does, the enemy with the lowest HP, but on a warrior, it's just not that effective because he's literally just going to be barely chipping away, especially someone like Bade who doesn't have very much attack to begin with. That 260% is not going to do all that much to actually boost his attack all that much. I think for the most part they've kind of done away with this lowest HP thing with the newer heroes. I don't see it quite as much. But let's go ahead and move on. Reduce its attack by 30%. So that's pretty decent, to be honest. You kind of always want that. There's just so many heroes that do that job so much better than Bade does that it's not really worth having him on your team just for that. So it's for 2 rounds with a 45% chance of dealing 420% of attack extra damage. Cannot be dodged. Once again with that cannot be dodged there for Mickey. The extra damage, 45% chance, so it's not even 50% chance of dealing 420% of his attack, which is excessively low. Not to mention it only lasts 2 rounds, which isn't too bad, but we had heroes like Walter where it lasted 6 rounds, or Bloodblade where it lasted for 4 rounds, who had much higher attack. So I would say overall that's pretty useless with a hero like this, especially with only that 45% chance. I believe theirs was 100% chance on most of their abilities, so much better with those other heroes. Let's go and move on to a second ability. Will of the Undead 3. Passive skill, increase HP by 40% and armor break by 36%. So once again, we're seeing with these undead heroes or the shadow class heroes that they have that armor break. Once again, his attack is so low, it's not really going to do much. That 40% HP, that's good, makes him a little bit more of a wall, but ultimately, once again, there are just so many heroes that do that job so much better than he does. Let's go ahead and move on. Death Threat 3, a passive skill, gains 16.8% armor break and 14% crit with each attack. So that's a little bit more armor break. Once again, pretty much everybody who is in the Shadow class probably does this better than Bade just because his attack is so low. We're going to take a look at another hero here in just a second whose attack is a lot lower. But I'll go ahead and tell you why he is a better hero here in just a sec. While below 50% health, increase the attack by 50% for 3 rounds. Skill can only be triggered once. Now, I mentioned in my previous videos that I do not like the while below 50% health. It is a little bit better with these warrior class heroes who have such massive amounts of health, because even when they reach 50%, they have a fair amount of health left. So they're probably going to make it a couple more rounds. But the 50% attack on a warrior, especially like an old character like Bade, who just has such low attack, it's not really going to make any kind of difference whatsoever. So like I said, he's pretty useless. He's just good for fodder, basically. If you have a couple of Bades saved up, you might put him into somebody else, or if you have quite a few, get him up to 9 stars so you can sink him into a 10 stars fodder. That's really all he's good for. So let's go ahead and take a look at the next hero, and that would be Dominator. Dominator is the one I was talking about. He's got much lower attack. He's got quite a bit more HP, about 120,000 more, I believe. Dominator is not a good hero whatsoever, don't get me wrong. I just think that he's slightly better than Bade for PvE, for the simple reason that he heals himself. And so that can be a little bit useful if you don't have any good heroes at all. You don't have any 5 stars that can become 6 star and then become a 10 star. Not that I would ever 10 star this hero under any circumstances, but still. As far as building up a hero for PvE, if you haven't pulled anything better than a Dominator, he might be worth 6 starring just for PvE in the beginning. But there's still other heroes that do the jobs that he does well much better. So we can take a look. 13,846. That is extremely low in the attack. That's probably one of the lowest attacks in the game, to be honest. There might be one or two other, warrior class that we're going to see in other factions that are pretty on par with that, but, just more fodder, garbage heroes. And then we can see here he's also pretty slow. So let's go ahead and take a look at this real quick. Deals 214% of attack damage against backline enemies and has a 38% chance to freeze for 2 rounds. So he didn't used to have that freeze. I guess that's a little better. So at least he has some crowd control now. But 214% of his attack, it didn't do that much to boost up Bade. And his attack was, I want to say, 3,000 higher than this character's. So that really is just not going to do anything. That 38% chance to freeze is not a bad percentage for the freeze, but ultimately I think it's going to be, pretty useless considering all the other really great freeze heroes. In fact, the new hero, which we'll take a look at, he definitely does a better freeze. I think his percentage might be a little lower, but it's pretty on par with 38%. Also, healing self for 600% of attack HP. Cannot be dodged. Once again, that healing, like I said, that will help with PvE. His attack is so low, 600% is not going to really make the hugest difference in the world, but it's still nice to have that healing if you don't have another character that heals. Because characters that don't heal in like the Aspen Dungeon, they just get chipped away until they're dead, so even strong heroes don't fare all that well. So having a hero with a healing ability definitely helps that quite a bit. Increase HP by 40% and hit by 20%. Getting hit is always great. Bonus hit, definitely, worth investing in. But once again, his attack is so low that 20, just because he hits the target, it's not really still not gonna do anything really. And the 40% HP makes him a little bit more of an HP wall. Definitely better than Bade as an HP wall, but still, as a tank, he's decent at best, like mid to low tier. Its third ability here is gain 75% of attack as a HP when the enemy hero triggers dodge. So that kind of actually screws him over a little bit if you think about it, because he's got this cannot be dodged. So every time his special goes off, he's definitely not going to get this ability off. And 75% of attack as HP is nothing. It's less than his 13,000. So that's actually really, really low. Hardly ever probably going to see anything from that. Let's go and take a look at his fourth ability. Each attack heals self for 112% of HP. So he will get this heal every single time. And with this, like I said, if you don't have anything else, those 2 heals do make him at least halfway decent at doing the Aspen Dungeon for beginners. And of course, when you have him at a 5 star or a 6 star, those are going to be much lower. Once again, I think Dominator is one of the cooler looking heroes, a lot like Bade is. I think he's got a really sick design, but unfortunately he's just useless. Dominator is actually the first 5-star that I got that could turn into a 6-star whenever I was playing on main. And I had been looking on Reddit and said that he was one of the better characters. Obviously really old post from back whenever the game had first started, when he was a really high tier character. But yeah, unfortunately he has fallen off quite dramatically. Let's go ahead and take a look at our third slot here. Our third slot is a little bit different, only because this third character is not a bad hero. He actually has the exact same problem that Karma had, where she was too slow to be effective, which Karma now is amazing. She's a really good hero. I didn't put her in my top 3, but if I had made a top 5, she definitely more than likely would have had the 4th slot, not counting the 2 new heroes, of course, because I don't have very much data on them, but not including those 2 new heroes, she definitely would have had the 4th slot, and then probably Lutz would have had the 5th, as far as good heroes go. But the hero that we're talking about right now is Field. Now Field, he's got some pretty cool abilities, decent attack, decent HP, decent defense, and he's a little on the slow side, but not too bad, pretty on par with Rangers. So let's go ahead and take a look. Deals 159% of attack damage against 4 random enemies with 100% chance to stun assassin foes for 2 rounds and to poison them for 3 rounds. So back whenever assassins were meta, that was really, really powerful. I don't know if it had a stun before. I want to say that it maybe did extra damage, a poison, it may have done a stun and extra damage if I remember correctly, but a poison's always good to get off, Once again, the main problem with this is that he's going to be so slow that if he gets his attack off, it's probably just going to be once. Dealing 65% of attack extra damage each round for 3 rounds. So that's not too bad. He does have pretty high attack. That poison is still not as good as Walter, and Walter, I believe, is quite a bit faster than him, even with the skill tech tree. Field is just, he could be such a great character if they would just increase his speed like they did with Karma. And I know a lot of people have done videos on Karma and how she's kind of a sleeping giant, and if they would have just fixed her speed, she'd be a great hero, and now she is. So maybe they will listen up and actually do Field the same way. Passive skill. Each attack has a 75% chance to stun the target for 2 rounds. See, that's fantastic. 75% chance to stun is great. Unfortunately, once again, he's just slow. He also hits those 4 random enemy targets, so he can hit anybody, the DPS units, tanks. So getting a stun off on one of those DPS units is pretty great, but you have a 4 and 6 chance that he might actually hit one of those DPS units. So your chances are pretty good that he does, and then only a 75% chance, which is pretty high, to stun the target for 2 rounds. So stunning those DPS units would be super helpful. Unfortunately, he's just too slow. Alright, his third ability here, deal extra 125% of attack damage on stunned foes. So whenever they are stunned, he does that extra 125% damage. So taking out those DPS units just a little bit more quickly, if you manage to stun one, you also get that bonus damage, so that's great. Fourth ability, increase armor break by 40% and attack by 35%. It's interesting that his passive is in the 3rd slot here. You see or 4th slot here. You see a lot in the 3rd slot. Typically, a lot of those 50% or less health things in the 4th slot. So this is better in my opinion. So 40% armor break is pretty great. Once again, Shadow Heroes, lots of armor break, kind of a staple to them. And the 35% attack increase is also really good as well, because he already has